Hey there, and welcome to Be the CEO of Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Olga Lacroix, a mom, a former therapist, a certified coach, and a mindfulness teacher. I am here to share valuable tips and insights for all of you mothers and busy women out there. Why? My goal to help you take care of your mental well-being without sacrificing your life of accomplishments. Whether you are juggling family, career, or personal growth, this podcast is your go to resource for becoming the best version of yourself. Let's dive in and start mastering the art of balance together. All right, guys, welcome to episode 246. This episode is so close to my heart. It that combines two of my professional passions. One is leadership, and the other one is mindfulness. For those of you who are new to my world, I am a former therapist. I worked as a clinical social worker for many years, and to some degree, I still do. That work does not leave me; it comes with me. And from my early days, just graduated. One of my first my well, one of my first jobs was at an addiction center downtown Ottawa at a homeless shelter. So the homeless shelter had an addiction center attached to it. And that was my first clinical job. Uh, and so, for all purposes, if you don't know anything about clinical work, it is therapy. And the complexity of the clients I was helping at the time was immense. These clients not only had addictions, they often also had a severe mental health condition. And so those two things were had to be treated through therapy. So it wasn't just the addiction, there was often a dual diagnosis of addiction and a mental health condition. On top of that, they were homeless. So their mental health and addiction had impacted them to such degree that they had lost everything. Many of these men, because this was specifically a shelter for men, an addiction center for men, they also had a history of child abuse or abuse in their lives at some point. And the treatment center that I worked at had like an understanding that these were not your regular humans just accessing therapeutic help, that they had a lot of complexities. And so it was sort of understood that we needed to come up with out of the box approaches to appeal to this man so that it was one comprehensive for them, like that all their needs were met, but that also could give them an opportunity that maybe they've never had, that if they ever received other treatments and anywhere, that perhaps we were doing something that was new and different for their healing. And we were given as therapists like open range, like go figure it out, what works with addictions and mental health. And I had been myself as a student in university, I had so much anxiety, and I had found it very helpful when I went to the yoga studio, when I read books like, oh my God, now I forget his name. He wrote The Present Moment, and I'm seeing another book, New Earth, and it is Eckhart Tolle. Like I went to all these seminars to hear about his books when I was in university because I found that idea of being in the present moment so healing for my anxiety, like moments of peace where I could just be at ease. So, of course, I became very interested in finding like holistic approaches to therapy that would combine with therapy that were along the lines of being in the present and life just brought me straight to the Ottawa Mindfulness Clinic, who at the time was starting to offer training for clinicians. And so I was very lucky to be one of the, I guess, first batches of professionals who got trained on a stress reduction approach, a mindfulness-based stress reduction approach to therapy. And then I took it upon myself to do more studying and reading specifically for addictions and mental health. That long story to tell you, my passion for mindfulness started with my passion for helping humans. And it's evolved and it continues to amaze me, because no matter what niche or what population I'm working with, mindfulness continues to be incredibly helpful. So today, I want to combine the subject of leadership and mindfulness. As you know, as an executive coach, I worked with a lot of humans who are in management positions, or if they're not in management or director or CEO positions, they own their business, they are coaches, they might be therapists, or they're employees who want to develop their leadership skills and they want to move up the corporate world, or in my town here in Ottawa, people want to move up within government. So not corporate, but similar. So I often find myself having conversations with them on being present. They often want to be more in control, more aware of triggers, more. I was coaching deputy director a few weeks back, and they were telling me like they just want to be more grounded, less on like the big picture and be more on like, okay, but right at this moment. In each of these instances, I find myself at the end of the session teaching some mindfulness or inviting that approach into their leadership style. So I don't know who you are listening to this podcast, regardless of you being an executive, a business owner, a manager, or none of those things. I encourage you to listen, because I am going to explain 7 of the principles of mindfulness, the 7 principles of mindfulness. And I'm going to like bring them specifically towards leadership. But if you're listening and you like leadership is not your job, I promise you, by just listening to the 7 principles of mindfulness within even this context is going to be helpful to you, because you can just apply that to whatever it is that you do for work or even parenting. So that's my intro to you as to what we're talking about today and why. Okay. So let's talk about mindfulness for just a quick moment. I know many of you think of mindfulness as just sitting quietly. In fact, some of you use mindfulness and meditation as synonymous, and they're not the same thing. Meditation is a form of mindfulness, but it is definitely not the only thing that mindfulness kind of is. In fact, the actual translation from the oh my God, language of Buddha. What was the language of Buddha? Sanskrit to English, mindfulness actually translates as to remember. That's the actual translation, word by word. To remember. So I want you to think of mindfulness as that. Our willingness to remember. To remember what? To be here in the present. It isn't just about sitting quietly. It's about becoming more resilient, more insightful, and if we're talking about leadership, a more effective leader. I'm also going to talk to you about executive coaching and how it can really harness your mindfulness, and it can actually help you excel in your management role. So, like I said, whether you are an executive, a manager, a business owner, or none of those things, stay tuned. This might just be what you need to hear to elevate your leadership game Again, whether you're leading at home or you're leading at work or at a volunteer organization, it doesn't really matter. So let me just get back a few steps. Like, what is mindfulness? I translated the word for you from Sanskrit, but simply put, mindfulness is the practice of being fully present and engaged in the moment. I like to give this definition also because it makes so much sense and it's easy and it's fast. Mindfulness is mind and body in the same place at the same time. It's being aware of your thoughts and feelings without distraction or judgment for what you're thinking or what you're feeling. Now, while it really originated in ancient meditation practices, today it has practical applications in everyday life scenarios, in business, in leadership, you name it. So, how does mindfulness translate to leadership? Imagine this: a leader who can maintain calm during a storm, who can think clearly under pressure, who can make decisions that are thoughtful and well considered, that leader builds trust amongst their teammates, amongst their peers. That is the leader I would like to have in a plane if the plane goes in an emergency. Somebody who can keep themselves clear, calm, assertive. Now, that's what mindfulness can bring to the table. Sometimes we think what makes somebody really calm is just incredible confidence. And sometimes like we confuse that with anger and like, I don't know, selfishness. Somebody who's like, I make all the calls here. But truly, mindfulness is soft, yet powerful. It is calm, yet powerful. It is resilient, yet powerful. It really helps in reducing stress and it enhances our decision-making capacity. It enhances our communication and definitely builds on trust. So your team will see through you, will feed off your energy, and will respond so differently to you. So let's dive into the 7 principles. Oh, I want to tell you something. Actually, a recent study of neuroscience, the research shows that mindfulness practices shrink the amygdala. So the brain's ability to flight or fight is in the amygdala. That's the center of it. So when you practice mindfulness, that response shrinks. Like the amygdala actually shrinks, which is, like, as you know, associated with fear and emotion processing. Meanwhile, it thickens the prefrontal cortex, which manages your higher order brain functions like awareness, concentration, and decision making. Okay. So when we practice mindfulness, the amygdala, which is associated with fear and processing emotions, shrinks. And at the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which manages our higher order brain functions like awareness, decision making, concentration, gets thicker. So how does this affect leadership? Leaders that are practicing mindfulness report higher levels of resiliency when things get tough. All the layouts that are happening, you're the one who has to face it. You're the one who has to let go of people. You're the one who has to do all the work without help. So they show more resiliency in moments like that, an enhanced ability to work under stress, fostering a sense of calm, being composed, and enjoying their job. This is the best gift that mindfulness has given me. The more you're in the present, the more you enjoy the present, the more you enjoy what you're doing, no matter what you're doing. So whether that is laundry, I get to enjoy it when I'm in the moment, when I'm like, oh, I'm just doing this one thing at a time. So in the context of modern leadership, mindfulness has really shifted from an individual practice to a strategic leadership tool. This I find fascinating. So look around. What leaders do you now know that practice mindfulness? I started reading a book, The Tribe of Mentors, which is huge. Okay, it's like a Bible, so thick. And before, like, I'm not done. I didn't finish it. Full confession, I didn't. I like reading many books at the same time. And if you walk around my house, you see where I sit down to read because I leave evidence of one book in every little corner. That one I was carried away by other books, and I'm gonna come back to it. But throughout the first few chapters, this book, they interviewed all these mentors, so highly successful humans. What amazed me is that they all had or disclosed to have a practice of mindfulness. Okay, highly successful humans. So they publicly credited mindfulness for their enhanced performance, for their leadership outcomes, for the financial success. So through mindfulness, leaders can really develop a keen sense of situational awareness, of self-awareness, of empathy and communication, of non-reactive mindset that actually fosters productivity, creativity, innovation, and that adapts to the organizational culture and changes. I would say that in my personal life and in my professional life, the tool that I keep going back to in order to adjust to change is mindfulness. And actually, I would say this is where executive coaching comes into play. I mean, I would say I am a certified executive coach, trained in executive coaching. And because of all my years of studying mindfulness, it's a unique blend I bring to the table. So I am going to say that I am aware when I talk about executive coaching being helpful for this. I'm specifically talking about myself and or another executive coach who specializes in mindfulness, which there are many because we see the effects and the impact. In fact, I was talking to a peer of mine who's been an executive coaching for several years now, and she recently just attended a mindfulness program or workshop. And she was like, oh my God, every single client I coach needs to begin to practice this. I can see the benefits. So, executive coaching will always create awareness, self awareness, obviously, but a skilled coach that's also immersed in mindfulness will help leaders integrate mindfulness into their daily routines, not just as a practice, but as a leadership philosophy. And I think we know this. We have to align what we say with what we do, and people look at what we do more so than what we say. So, for instance, an executive coaching session can tailor mindfulness techniques to help leaders navigate through high stakes negotiations or strategic decision making moments or crisis management, just to ensure that they remain balanced and insightful under pressure. And I would say many of my clients have begun to use this almost as an approach of intervention, like using these principles to understand their employees better, to understand themselves better. Always first apply it on yourself. So everything that I'm going to be telling you here, apply to yourself, master yourself, and then see the beautiful ripple effect of this onto your teams, onto the people you lead, onto your community. Okay, like home community, your community. So, what are these mindfulness principles? So, as I mentioned, there's 7 principles of mindfulness. I've studied them all. I've practiced them all. I am great at some. I resist a few. And so I always think of myself, and the invitation is there for you, as an ongoing mindfulness teacher and an ongoing mindfulness student. So I want to, I think I'm going to begin with patience. Patience is one of the 7 principles of mindfulness. And is quite effective in leadership because it's not about having all the answers yourself or all the answers immediately. Patience is about being patient with yourself as the solutions unfold. Patience in mindfulness is about letting things evolve as they may, letting things be what they are, as opposed to our constant impatience to fix something, to change something. Okay. It's about being patient with yourself, as I said, with others as solutions unfold. Think about that for you. How patient are you as you're looking for solutions and or others are? Patience prevents like fast decisions that later we regret and fosters a more thoughtful approach to challenges. It's sort of like seeing the challenge, like something that has gone wrong, as okay, I'm going to, as an opportunity to almost pause, inhale, as solutions begin to unfold. This is really important because internally, what is happening is that we're actively reaching for that frontal cortex of the brain as opposed to the amygdala. So, how do you implement this? Implement regular reflection periods where you and your team can assess on ongoing projects without rushing to conclusions. This could be through schedule reviews or end of day wrap ups, where the focus is on understanding progress and the process rather than immediate results. Sort of like taking an approach as a leader that what we do here is evaluate, and that's okay. And that the solutions will come to us when all of us collectively are calm. When our nervous system is on flight or fight response, like, oh my God, mistakes are not allowed. We don't have the solution. When everybody's panicking, nobody's thinking clearly. So you as a leader coming with like, it's fine. We're going to make mistakes and we're going to find solutions. And I'm going to create the space to find the solutions because I, as a leader, will be patient that the solution is not here yet. I'm going to be patient as we're actively looking for that solution. I noticed that when I think of this principle, which I would say is one of the first ones I dived into, practicing, even as a therapist, I definitely was in a rush to find the solutions for my clients or get them to the other side. Like I was so attached to like, let's go. I want to see you as a young clinician. Let's go. Tell me that you're still sorry, that you're not having, right? Like I had my own personal agenda that was impatient. Instead of sitting in that moment, in that process of each of my clients, letting it evolve as it may. No agenda. And in fact, I would say that in hindsight, my clients who I approach through this principle did better because they were allowed to explore. They were allowed to just bring to the table at their pace what was happening, as opposed to meeting my inner timeline. So think of you as a leader. How will this impact you if you were more patient? One thing I know, all my leaders that I coach are more patient, which has helped you. So a part of you loves the lack of patience because it's what's made you like maybe just make decisions fast and move forward in life. So this might feel like against your nature, and yet it's so powerful for your nature. Let's dive into non-judging. Non-judging in the window of mindfulness speaks to not judging our thoughts, not judging our feelings, like literally just having such a compassionate, observing role when we observe our thoughts, our anger, our feelings. And in leadership, this is so essential that we just notice, oh my God, this person irritates me, right? Which happens. Guys, it happens. There's chemistry or there's no chemistry. Somebody does something exactly as you like it, and some others will never. But it's not judging yourself for having the thoughts or the feelings, but to become aware. In leadership, leadership often require us to elevate situations and make decisions quickly But this can also lead to a habit of constant judgment. You also might think of this as overthinking, right? Like, oh, why did I make that call? Why did I say this word? I wonder how that meeting went because I said this, or I showed up with this clothing, or whatever. So, by practicing non judging, you learn to observe your thoughts and feelings without immediately categorizing them as good or bad. This is such a beautiful space of mindfulness where nothing is good and nothing is bad. Everything is just is. It is it. And you can say it backward and it means the same. It is it. Is that noticing, oh, I had a thought. Oh, I'm impatient. Oh, this person really triggers me. I have that thought. And not making it a good or bad thing, just an observation. This can be particularly powerful in high stress situations or premature judgments might cloud your decision making. And it is so helpful in managing your teams or your family members or your friends, whatever the context, because you are developing the observer, and the observer is just noticing. It's like watching a movie and you are the main character and you're just observing yourself. And from that perspective, you're not there to fix, to change, to judge, to label. You're there to notice with kind of curiosity, which will land in another principle. And it just gives you more information about yourself. And you get to decide what you do with that information. Now, in my experience, when you develop a non judgment skill, virtue within yourself, for yourself, that will translate and go through others, where you have a lot more understanding for others. So, what is a practical application? Begin by observing your internal interactions during meetings. That's simple. And God knows we now have a lot of Zoom meetings. So, just observe your internal reactions, your internal conversations as you're sitting in those meetings. Notice when you label your ideas or people too quickly. We're all guilty, right? Like, that's stupid. Oh, that was a great idea. That was a bad idea. That was whatever. Just notice when you're labeling ideas or people too quickly, and consciously pause to consider multiple perspectives. What would be another way of looking at this? Let's move on to the beginner's mind. I kind of alluded to that earlier. Beginner's mind in mindfulness is all about doing things that you do every day, like waking up in my case, next to my husband, and pretending as though it was the first time I wake up with my husband. Like, I remember that was an exciting morning. Or, wow, you're here. Right? I suppose like, oh, you're here, taking that for granted. Beginner's mind is doing things as though it was the first time, which means we have an extreme sense of curiosity. There's novelty, there is excitement, and there is no autopilot. There is not, I've done, I know what I'm doing, I can do it with my eyes closed. That lack of, like, I don't know if it's gratitude or purpose connected to it, but beginner's mind is about doing things as though it was the first time. In leadership, the danger of thinking, I know it all, can be quite real, right? Like, if you've been sitting in a position for a long time, you're like, what else are they going to teach me? I tell you, when I last year got accepted into my certification program, I had that attitude. I didn't have a beginner's mind attitude. I was thinking there, oh, what are they going to teach me that I don't already know? I am regretful of that thought because they have taught me a lot of things that I didn't know. And how can one think that you know it all? And that's a dangerous spot to be for a leader, whether that is you as a parent, you as a spouse, you as a CEO. Nobody has it all. Nobody knows it all, excuse me. So approaching problems and conversations and team leading meetings and Projects with a beginner's mind encourages openness and eagerness to learn from your team, right? Like instead of assuming they never write a report the way I like it, imagine that you're telling yourself, I'm going to read this report as though it was the first time I read anything from this person. What changes there is all your assumptions that you already pre-made assumptions. And we tend to not give people a second chance or a third chance, right? We're blinded by our own biases of our initial responses to things and people. So what is a practical way of applying this beginner's mind? Challenge yourself to approach a familiar situations as if it was your first time dealing with it. Ask questions that someone new to the field might ask. This can really help you uncover assumptions that you might bring to work every single day that really need to be reevaluated. And new ideas might inspire you and actually your team. So although I am talking to you, the leader, I want you to know that once you start implementing this will give you so much to give to your people. So much. Because in you becoming more mindful, acting more mindful, living more mindful, first of all, they'll learn by example because they'll feel your energy. And you will begin to use these tools to see them through these tools, if that makes any sense. It's just so beautiful. It happens to me all the time. I'm going to go through trust. Trust in mindfulness is about releasing control. It's about knowing that you are exactly where you need to be. That you don't need to check for that calendar a million times or that email or that information or that address, but to just know that the right information will come to you. Trust that. The right doctors will come to you. Trust that you're always exactly where you need to be. That is the definition of mindfulness when it comes to trust. Trust in oneself. Trust in yourself as a leader. You must trust your intuition, your judgment, while also showing trust in your team's capabilities. This builds confidence and encourages a more autonomous, engaged team environment. So when there is trust in your people, trust in yourself, there's trust in your people. When you don't trust yourself, when you're looking for validation, where you're insecure about what you can bring to the table, you might become more of a helicopter. They call me, my husband says I'm a helicopter mom. You don't want to be a helicopter mom. You also don't want to be a helicopter leader. You don't want to be like buzzing above people just to make sure that they're okay, that their work is okay. So working on trusting yourself, your intuition, the decisions you make, that if something doesn't feel like it's a good match, you act upon that. A practical application of trust is delegating significant responsibilities to team members. That's a tough one for a lot of my leaders, and I encourage them always. And really resist the urge to micromanage. This will really demonstrate trust and allows you to focus on other leadership responsibilities, and your team will love you for it because they'll feel much more engaged when you delegate big tasks to them. Let's go to non-striving. Oh, that is one of the ones that is very complicated. Okay, not complicated. It is the one where I have the most space personally for growth myself. I'll explain what non-striving is. And I know. Many of the people I coach struggle with this concept equally. Non-striving is about living life in a way where you're not after the next thing, but you are here. That's essentially what it is. In reality, we're always striving for the next thing, the next big car, the next paycheck, the next summer, the weekend. And we're striving to become. So in that striving, we negate who we are in this moment. We live the present, which ultimately in mindfulness, we want to be present as much as possible. So non-striving is about letting go of the need to force outcomes. Oh my God. Most of us live for those outcomes, and we will go through great extent at any cost to get the outcomes that we want, right? It's about effort without attachment to a specific result, which can significantly reduce workplace stress. And I would say stress in general. If you, this is why it's like reset your mindset, which by the way, doors are open and I want you in there. We focus so much on the concept of intention, of living intentionally. It is the complete opposite. When you're striving, you're less intentional. You're more focused on expectations, and the expectation is the outcome. And if you don't get to that outcome, you are not happy. You're disappointed. Too much disappointment can lead to depression. So a practical way for practicing non-striving is to set goals, but to be flexible about how you achieve them. So you can encourage innovation and creativity and experimentation, and emphasizing that the learning process is more important than the final outcome. That's a bit of growth mindset there as well. On to acceptance. Certainly one of my favorite principles of mindfulness. Acceptance. It's about acknowledging to yourself that what is happening is happening. We spend so much time trying to change what's happening or what happened. We don't want to accept it. And I believe after doing so much work with humans with trauma and grief, that sometimes we misunderstand acceptance for liking your circumstances. So if you are a parent who lost a child, acceptance is the last word you want to hear because you don't want to accept it. You don't agree with what happened. You don't like what happened. And you want it changed. You want time to be reversed and that scenario to not happen again. Acceptance does not equal liking the circumstances. It simply means you accept that what is. I go back to it is it. That is acceptance. You don't have to like it, but you can acknowledge that it happened. It arrived. It's here. Acceptance involves recognizing things are as they are right now. So for leaders, this means understanding the current state of your business or your team dynamics or the way people do the things that they do without any denial or avoidance. That's the way it is. We are in this scenario right now. That is the dynamic of my team right